Beginning with his early successful movies like Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and E.T., Steven Spielberg's work has often been denigrated as superficial, childish, and worst of all, commercial. In 1993, however, Schindler's List garnered him the Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Director. Spielberg was hailed for taking on a serious subject like the Holocaust, even though this wasn't his first film to deal with the Nazis. 12 years earlier, Raiders of the Lost Ark was hailed as a grand adventure, expertly constructed, but without any underlying message. It was seen as a fun popcorn movie, and the Nazis merely an aesthetic choice that fit the kind of movie Spielberg was mimicking. This is ridiculous, of course. Nazis are always going to have a significance to Spielberg, and what happens to them in the movie is certainly informed by his worldview. They are not just defeated, but destroyed by God until all traces of them are wiped from the earth. Central to the idea of Indiana Jones, though, is a statement about the Holocaust from Spielberg. Indiana Jones harkens back not only to the adventure serials of the 1930s, but also to characters like Captain America and Superman, created by Jewish artists for fighting Nazis years before America formally entered World War II. At the time Raiders of the Lost Ark is set, America is not at war with Germany, but here is an American fighting and defeating them. The fantasy is not just of the adventure, exotic locales, and search for treasure, but the fantasy that America was decisive about the evil of the Nazis and fought them immediately. Now let's go back to Schindler's List, and one of the most striking images of the movie. A little girl wandering around the liquidation of the ghetto, being completely ignored even though we the viewer can see her red coat standing out against the rest of the movie in black and white. This was a real historical person mentioned by Oskar Schindler. To him, she represented the loss of innocence. But here's what Steven Spielberg had to say about her.
I did it in color, or at least I did the coat in color, for another reason, which was that the Holocaust was known about. You had Ben Hecht and Roosevelt and Eisenhower, and Churchill knew that the Holocaust was taking place. It was as obvious as a little girl wearing a red coat walking down the street.
I think there's a theme Spielberg is expressing in both these movies, and that is him asking, why didn't somebody do something about this? In Raiders we get the fantasy that we did do something, whereas in Schindler we confront that we didn't. I don't think this translates into his original idea maturing, though. Even when Spielberg's work is acknowledged, there's still an impulse to divide his output between the commercial, seemingly frivolous popcorn movies and his more serious, disciplined, and mature movies. I think that divide doesn't really exist, and what we see in Raiders and Schindler are two different perspectives on the same subject, and there's value in both. We need to look at our past truthfully and soberly, but we also need to find the courage not to let it happen again. Even though he is the real person, it's hard to consider ourselves Oskar Schindler. But Indiana Jones? We can all be Indiana Jones. And if we can think of ourselves as Indiana Jones, we can make sure there aren't any more little girls in red coats.